Hello everyone and welcome to Boundless Dentistry. In this video we'll talk about malocclusion classification in relation to incisors, canines and molars. So let's get started. Okay, so firstly talking about incisor malocclusion relation, it's divided into three parts: class 1, class 2 and class 3. So let's start. First we'll talk about incisors. Now in class 1, this is maxillary central incisor, and now this is the cingulum of the maxillary central incisor with green, and this is mandibular central incisor. So this is class 1, and class 1 incisor malocclusion is defined as the lower incisors edge occludes or is immediately below the cingulum of the upper central incisor, which in this case is maxillary central incisor. So you can see how this is class 1. The incisal edge is immediately below the cingulum of maxillary central incisor. It occludes with it or lies just below the incisal edge of the mandibular central incisor. Okay, so talking about class 2 of incisor malocclusion relation, in this, let's draw maxillary central incisor. Again, this green is the cingulum of maxillary central incisor, and now drawing the mandibular central incisor. This is the mandibular central incisor. Now you can see the relation in this. Class 2 incisor malocclusion is defined as when the incisal edge of the lower incisors lies posterior to the cingulum of maxillary central incisor. You can see with this red arrow the position of cingulum in relation to the incisal edge of mandibular central incisor. It is posterior to the cingulum of maxillary central incisor. Now in this classification, it is further divided into two divisions, which is simply known as div 1 and div 2. So let's talk about that. Firstly, talking about div 1, it's called as class 2 div 1. In this particular scenario, this is the maxillary central incisor, and this is mandibular central incisor. Now note, you can see the distance between the mandibular and maxillary central incisor. In this case, the maxillary central incisor is proclined. Proclined means it is forward than its original position. If it was backward, it would have been known as retroclined. So in class 2 div 1, maxillary central incisor is proclined from its original position. So this is class 2 div 1. Now talking about class 2 div 2, in this particular scenario, this is our maxillary central incisor, and this is mandibular central incisor. Now note, in this case the maxillary central incisor is retroclined from its original position. It's backwards, so it's known as retroclined from its original position. The mandibular central incisor is in its respective position, but the maxillary central incisor is retroclined. So this is all about class 2. Now moving on to class 3. So now talking about class 3, in this case, drawing the maxillary central incisor here and the mandibular central incisor over here. So now you can see the relation in them. You can see how far ahead is the mandibular central incisor. So in this case, the lower incisors edge lies anterior to the cingulum of the upper incisor. You can see this is the cingulum and how ahead is the mandibular central incisor. So also in this case, overjet is reduced. You can see the distance here, the overjet is reduced, and now the patient experiences what is known as crossbite, which we have discussed in this previous video. Okay, so this was all about incisors malocclusion relation. Now talking about canine malocclusion relation. Now canine malocclusion is also divided into three parts: class 1, class 2 and class 3. So first we'll talk about class 1. Okay, so drawing the maxillary canine, this is the distal slope and this is the mesial slope. As you can see, the distal slope is larger than the mesial slope. You can see it clearly over here. This is the mesial slope, MS, and this right here is the distal slope. Okay, so now drawing the mandibular canine, in this case this is the distal slope and this is the mesial slope. Same goes for here. Here we have the mesial slope and here we have the distal slope. Now in class 1 of canine malocclusion relation, you can see that the mesial slope of the upper canine coincides with the distal slope of lower canine. This is class 1 canine malocclusion relation. Now in class 2, again I'm going to draw the upper canine and the lower canine. Now you can clearly see the difference over here. This is the mesial slope with blue and this is the distal slope. Now in this case, in class 2, the distal slope of upper canine coincides with the mesial slope of lower canine. It's the reverse what was present in class 1. In class 1 we had mesial slope of upper canine coincides with the distal slope of lower canine, but in class 2 distal slope of upper canine coincides with the mesial slope of lower canine. So that is the difference between class 1 and class 2. And now finally class 3 of canine. In this case I'm going to draw the mandibular canine and the maxillary canine. Now in this case you can see how far ahead is the mandibular canine as compared to the maxillary canine. So in this case the mesial slope of upper canine, which is this, lies behind the distal slope of lower canine. As you can see the difference, in other words you can simply call it as lower canine is placed mesially to upper canine, because if we suppose this is the midline of the dental arch, you can see the distance between this. The lower canine is present mesially as compared to the upper canine. You can see the distance. The lower canine is present mesially as compared to the upper canine. So this was all about canine man-occlusion relation. Now moving towards our last classification, that is molar man-occlusion relation. So let's talk about that. Okay, so now talking about molar man-occlusion relation, in class 1 similarly 3 classes are present over here. In class 1, first we'll draw the maxillary molar and then we'll draw the mandibular molar. Okay, this is with the blue is the mesiobuccal cusp and with red is the distobuccal cusp, and with green you can see is the buccal groove which is present in the mandibular molar, first molar. So you can see how the mesiobuccal cusp of the maxillary first molar, upper molar, is occluding or coinciding with the buccal groove of mandibular first molar. So this is how the class 1 molar malocclusion classification is defined as mesiobuccal cusp occludes in the buccal groove of lower first molar or mandibular molar. Now talking about class 2 molar malocclusion, let's draw the mandibular first molar over here, and this is the mandibular first molar. Again, this is the mesiobuccal cusp, and this is the distobuccal cusp, and this is the buccal groove. So now you can see the difference in class 1 and class 2. In this particular case, the distobuccal cusp, this cusp is occluding in the buccal groove of lower first molar. In class 1, it was the mesiobuccal cusp that was occluding in the buccal groove of a lower molar, and in this case, the distobuccal cusp is occluding in the buccal groove of the mandibular first molar. This is a difference. Now, class 2 molar classification is divided into two more divisions. Now, in division 1, the maxillary central incisor is proclined. The four maxillary central incisors are proclined, and thereby they increase the overjet. You can see how far ahead the maxillary incisors are present as compared to the mandibular central incisor, and this increases the overjet, and also it increases the overbite, or you can call it deep bite occurs. Now talking about class 2 division 2, in this case you can see the central incisors are retroclined and the lateral incisors are proclined. You can see how the lateral incisor is proclined ahead of its normal position, and the maxillary central incisor is retroclined. Reverse can also happen if in this case the maxillary lateral incisor is retroclined and the maxillary central incisor is proclined. So this variation exists in class 2 division 2 of molar malocclusion classification. Lastly, in class 2, a subdivision also occurs when on one side you can have class 1 relationship, as you can see over here with this blue on right hand side, and on the left hand side you can have class 2 relationship. So this is known as class 2 subdivision of molar classification. So lastly, now talking about class 3 of molar. Okay, so lastly talking about molar class 3 relationship. In this case, you can see how far ahead mandibular first molar is present as compared to maxillary first molar. So it is defined as a condition where mesiobuccal cusp of permanent maxillary first molar is occluding in the interdental space between the mandibular first and second molar. Like you can see how this is the space where the maxillary first molar is occluding between the mandibular second molar and mandibular first molar. So this is how class 3 molar malocclusion is defined. And lastly, subdivision can also occur in class 3, where you can have class 1 relationship on one side and you can have class 3 relationship on the other side. So this is known as class 3 subdivision. So this was all about incisor, canine and molar malocclusion classification. I hope this video was useful for you, and if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. So see you guys next time in our further videos. Thank you.